make sure that I have this working. I am going to go ahead and record this meeting. So I just want everyone to know that who's on. So my name is Kevin Karlik, and on behalf of Bennett Adelson team, I want to welcome everyone to our continuing series of webinars on Microsoft solutions and cloud solutions. Today's webinar is going to be about managing Microsoft Teams across your organization. I want to ask everyone to make sure that you mute your microphones during the session. Please feel free to enter any questions into the chat box for the Teams event, and we'll try to address them during or at the end of the presentation. And if we can't get to them, then we will try to make sure that we reach out to you or get the answers to you individually. Let me go ahead and do some quick introductions here. My name is Kevin Karlik, and I'm a Senior Solutions Sales Executive here at Bennett Adelson. We have Jason Ditzel on this call as well. Jason's one of our main presenters today. He's my colleague. He's a practice director here at Bennett Adelson. He has responsibility for, among other things, developing and delivering services around Microsoft's information worker and Teams practice. We also have Rick Wolf on. He's a senior consultant here at Bennett Adelson. And we have a special guest today, Jerry Berndobler from Nordson Corp, who's going to be on here speaking as well. So again, thank you everyone for joining. Before we begin though, for those who are unfamiliar with Bennett Adelson, I'll just tell you a little bit about us. Bennett Adelson is a professional services and integration partner focused on Microsoft. We're headquartered here in Cleveland, Ohio, and we've been in business since 1996. We've serviced over 1,000 clients to date. So here at Bennett Adelson, we have 8 practice disciplines to support clients' needs. Those are architecture and development, business intelligence, advanced infrastructure, information worker, connected systems, user experience, mobility solutions, and finally, dynamic solutions. We are a Microsoft Go partner for cloud collaboration and content, and we're also a partner for cloud productivity, Windows, and devices. Just so you know, we've received numerous awards. I just mentioned several of them. We've been selected as the Microsoft Partner of the Year in the Heartland. We've been selected multiple times as a top 200 Microsoft partner, and we've also been a top 100 most promising Microsoft solutions provider winner. So we are a Office 365 technology adoption programs member, as well as a Office 365 fast track partner and an Office 365 preferred deployment partner. In addition, we're members of Microsoft's SharePoint Patterns and Practices Council and a member of the Microsoft's Partner Advisory Council. So basically, in summary, I'm telling you, we've been here a long time. We're a trusted Microsoft Gold partner with the ability and experience to support current and future initiatives across the entire IT landscape, including Office 365, SharePoint. We do custom development, business intelligence, and Power Apps, as well as Azure. We've worked on a multitude of projects. We've had migrated many clients to Office 365 from basically every environment, and we've worked with all size clients, including projects up over 80,000 seats. So in short, our team of consultants are truly experienced and they can be trusted. It'd be an honor for us to work with you should you ever have the need. So without further ado, I appreciate your time there. Let's look at our agenda. Today, we're going to discuss the challenges faced by organizations as Microsoft Teams growth expands. We're going to then review ProVision and how it addresses many of the control and governance issues that organizations face with Teams. We are going to give a ProVision demonstration, and then we're going to have a customer conversation with Nordson Corp. So first, Microsoft Teams has growth has just exploded within the last year. Last year, Microsoft added 95 million users as it became one of the most popular apps, primarily during the coronavirus pandemic. From March to June 2020 alone, Microsoft Teams experienced 894% growth. That's huge. And they now have over 500,000 organizations that use Microsoft Teams as their default messaging and virtual meeting platform. So with all this growth comes a lot of challenges, right? So some of the main challenges that we found talking to organizations is enabling IT controls for Teams, as well as providing users a self-service provision mechanism for Teams. Those two don't necessarily go hand in hand and working well together. And then also providing the ability to automatically apply IT governance policies to ensure consistencies across teams. So what I'm going to do now is turn it over to Jason Ditzel, a practice lead here, who's going to talk about these challenges a little bit more and then let you know how we can address these for you. Jason?
All right, thanks, Kevin. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so let's see. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, very good. So the ProVision tool is an IT-controlled user self-service Microsoft Teams provisioning tool. So our customers, we heard from our customers that there was a challenge and a little bit of a hesitancy to allow users to go ahead and just use the out-of-the-box provisioning facility that Microsoft provides for Teams. There was a lack of IT visibility into when a team was requested and created, and a lack of the ability to apply governance policies automatically to a team as it was provisioned. So this tool that we're going to demonstrate was created to address those needs. So ProVision, allows teams to collaborate securely with the enterprise policies that have been worked out with the IT team and with enterprise security to have a consistent application of the governance policy on the teams. This tool is tailored to your organization. So there's like 120 plus different attributes that can be applied to a team to go ahead and take different governance stances and implementations. So Bennett Adelson works with you to understand what governance policies you've either defined or help you define them for teams, and then go ahead and take a different combination of attributes to implement the vision and the goal there. We have not yet seen two organizations in the many deployments that we have of this thing get the exact same set of properties, which is interesting. Everybody has a little bit different tweak and stance on how they want to work with Microsoft Teams. And finally, this tool can be set up in your environment very quickly in a matter of weeks. So as a part of the solution, we have IP that we're going to demonstrate as a part of just everything built with a system to deploy, and we have consulting that we do with you around the Teams governance planning. Okay, so we can actually then configure it in your environment. All right, so I want to give a high-level overview of how ProVision is architected and how it works. So first up, we have a Power App that captures information from the user. So some of our customers have the ProVision Power App link pinned to Microsoft Teams. They deploy it from an enterprise perspective to have it locate on the left nav bar of Teams. From there, the user can click on that link and then open up a wizard, if you will, that asks questions tailored to your organization on what a user is trying to do. Now, out of the box, the tool can provision Microsoft Team or a SharePoint site or a communication site. So just the regular SharePoint sites and team sites and communication sites, all right, as well as Microsoft Teams. So the wizard can walk a user through different scenarios and then land at the appropriate technology to on which platform on which to create a new artifact. So the Power App saves the information to a SharePoint list. So an administrator can go in and see all of the activity that's ever happened with the provisioning tool. At that point, a Power Automate flow is triggered that starts an approval process. So this is where this is a major feature and hook into the IT controlled nature of the application. So this gives IT the opportunity to say, all right, hey, user, we've seen this request before. I just made it for one of your colleagues in a department, or we had a team created for a colleague in a department a couple of weeks ago. Let's go ahead and grant you access to that. Okay, so it gives you a hook into the process to have somebody from IT, take a look to say, yes, this looks good, or no, let's go ahead and try to use one we've already created. This then calls into Azure to do the provisioning and execute those scripts that we talked about, or that implement the property configuration that I talked about previously. Okay, so we have Azure Automation Runbooks that one per type of artifact we're trying to configure, and we can have different types of sets of parameters on a team depending on the need, all right, and the role. So the wizard could say, all right, if you want a vendor to collaborate with you, let's go ahead and turn on external sharing, okay, of this team. So an external person can come in and use the team with you. If some customers have a stance where they don't want external sharing on by default, so that could be a different set of runbook instructions that would then create a team that didn't have sharing. All right, so there's different there's the ability to have different flavors of each type of target artifact that we're creating. All right, so the runbooks run, execute, and then go ahead and provision the appropriate team or SharePoint site. And then a notification can be sent to your help desk to log an audit event that the action has been completed. All right, so that's another reason why this tool was built. Okay, so first of all, to get approvals in there, second, to provide consistency of governance and naming conventions. Everybody has a different type of naming convention that when we create the team, we can follow a programmatic standard. And then finally, to provide an audit record. Those are three main, lower level highlights of the tool. Okay, so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Rick, and he's going to give you a demo of how the thing works.
Okay, thanks, Jason. So let me share my screen. There we go. All right, so we're going to take we'll take a quick look at each of the four parts that compose this solution. So the first component is obviously the Power Apps. So this is the app that can be pinned in Teams. It can also be linked to from a SharePoint site or another site. It can be embedded in SharePoint. So it's just it's a standard Power Apps Canvas app. So you can run it just about anywhere. You could run it from a mobile device. So if you wanted to make this available via a tablet or phone, you could do that as well. So let's go launch that. And what this does, it presents the user with a little bit of a welcome and some instructions. So this, all of these screens can be customized to your needs. So, the verbiage on here can describe your services, what things are available for users to create in your environment, and provide some initial instructions to get them going. So we'll click on Get Started. In our demo environment here, we have three options that the users can create. So they can create a Microsoft Teams, they can create a SharePoint team site, and this is a Office 365 group-based team site. We can also do SharePoint group-based team sites as well, and SharePoint communication site. We have customizable, again, the UI is customizable. So in this case, we have links to learn more if we want to provide additional information about any of those resources. So in this case, we want to do Teams, we'll select Microsoft Teams. And then we start to capture some information about the user and their request. So by default, it defaults to the current user of the app. If they're requesting it on behalf of someone else, they can go and put their name in here. Would generally, in this case, we're using department. We're capturing that as well. If I had a department, it would be displayed there for my profile. But since I don't have that on my user profile, we'll just enter the department. Next would be the title and the purpose for the site. So as you see, the next buttons are only lit up once I complete all of the required information. So in this case, we'll just say this is a ProVision demo. Whoops. And the purpose is just demo. At the bottom, might be a little bit hard to see, but this is the naming convention that's defined for this particular demo app. So we're using the department name as well as the title. And we're stripping out any invalid characters, spaces, etc. for the alias, and then just concatenating those together. There could be other attributes as well. If you wanted to have a different naming convention, we can certainly do that as well. At this point, we don't check to make sure that this is unique. We'll do that at provisioning time. So if there's another site that was created out there called ProVision Demo for the test department, it would have this at this point could have the same alias, but the actual scripts will take care of ensuring that that's unique. So we'll click on Next. Now we want to identify who the owners of the site are. In this case, I'll just make it myself, and I can say I want both of me to be the owners. Guest access. Do users outside the organization need access to the site? So this will enable or disable external sharing for this particular site. This bit of information, along with the next page, which is the classification or the category, the type of site. These two settings will control the configuration of the site. So we have in our demo environment here, we have four classifications or configurations defined. We have one that's open for collaborating with anyone in the organization. And then if we combine this with the previous screen, the internal or external users, we can make that accessible to external or not as needed. Same with the other classifications or categorizations as well. So I can just select whatever type of team I want. This again is all customizable. Typically, we have customers have had anywhere from 2 to 4 or 5 different kinds of sites or classifications that they would like to create. So this again can be customized to your needs. Okay, so we'll select private in this case. We'll click on next. And this just gives us a summary of the information that we've entered, so we can see, make sure that we've got all of our information correct, everything that we want, and then we could simply submit that. So once it's submitted, this information is saved to a SharePoint list that contains all of the information that the user entered, as well as some additional information that's added to it as the provisioning process proceeds. So let's go take a look back over. Let's go to our browser. So this is a site, this is a Microsoft Learning Pathways site that we have in our environment. Again, just another example of how this provision can be leveraged or linked to. So we can link to it from a menu item. We could have a tile in here that would launch the application as well. It's the same application, just showing up in the browser. This site happens to store the site requests, which is the SharePoint list that contains all of the requests. So you can see I have a bunch of requests here from past history. There's a few that were created today. There's some that are still pending approval. Most of these provisioning is complete. So as this request proceeds through the approval process and the provisioning process, the status is updated as we go. And in this case, we'll also add, once it's provisioned, we'll add the provisioned alias, email alias for the team, as well as a link to the SharePoint site, just for reference. So you can see here that there are some of these that may have a duplicate name. Let me see if I can find one. If the name is duplicated, what we'll do here is there's demo 3, so we just make it unique by adding some additional characters to it at provisioning time. So we'll always ensure that this is a unique alias in the environment. Okay, let me switch over to email and see if I got my email request. So now this is as an approver, this is the request I would receive. We leverage the Power Automate approvals process. So this can be approved in email. It can also be approved in Teams as well. If I switch back to Teams, I could see I got a notification here as well to approve this request. So same way, it can be done via email, done via Teams, either way. In this case, we'll switch back to our email. And I can say, yes, I approve. I can add some comments if I want. That's optional. If for some reason I wanted to reject this, for example, if there was already a site that sort of covered the same purpose as this site being requested, I could reject it, type in the note that says, there's already a site that exists for this purpose. Please go, provide the link or provide the owner of that site that they could contact for additional information. So either way, approving or rejecting, the information is captured and is sent back to the requester. Okay, so we'll submit, approve this one. Once it's approved, you'll just see a little confirmation message. And let's go back to our Teams. And I just got an email as the requester now that says my request has been approved. And you can see the comment that said that looks good. I don't know how good it looks, but it looks good. Okay. Also in Teams, again, similar functionality that we saw in the SharePoint site. The same site request list. In this case, it's just pinned as a tab in our team, so I could see our same ProVision site request list. In this case, the top one here is the one we just approved, so we can see it's been approved and it's in the process of provisioning. So that will take a minute or two, a few minutes to provision. So what's happening there is once the approval step is completed and it's approved, the Power Automate flow will then call into Azure Automation runbooks. We can take a look at our diagram here. So once it's approved, we'll step into this Azure Automation runbook, and then we'll execute the appropriate runbook for the kind of resource that we're provisioning. In this case, Teams. The information that was captured as far as the classification, the requirement for external users, as well as the name, the alias, etc., is all passed to those scripts, and that's what's used to provision and to configure the team and the underlying SharePoint site for that team. Let's see. Let's switch back here to email and see if I don't see that it's completed yet, but I will switch over to my demo tenant. So this is the demo tenant where the teams are actually being created. So once it's created, I'll get an email as the requester with a link both to the SharePoint site as well as a link to the team itself. Let me see if I could find a previous one. So in this case, this is our demo 21. This is the email I would get once the provisioning is complete. It has a link to the SharePoint site. Oh, there it just popped up. There's our ProVision demo just got provisioned, as well as a link to the team itself. And there we go. There's the email we just got on ProVision demo. You can see the alias. There was a 2 added to the end because this was not unique. So we simply made it unique by adding some digits to the end. There's our newly provisioned team. And if we switch back over to SharePoint, actually we'll go the easy way. We can go to Files and open in SharePoint and see our ProVision Demo 2 site has been provisioned. Let me see. I think that was it. Let me switch back to our teams. The other teams. There we go. So now if we switch back here, we can see in our request list, we can see that the status of that item is now provisioning complete. The provisioned alias has been updated as well as the URL. If we click on the view entries here, we can see the history of, that's kind of hard to see there. We can see the history of this. So we can see that at 2:27, it was pending approval. 2:30, it was approved. 3 minutes later, provisioning was complete. And then the success status, as well as some information about the team and the site, is added to this list. So you have a history of the provisioning process, when it was created, when it was provisioned, etc. I think that's the highlights. Jason, was there anything that you wanted to add or anything that I skipped over?
We have the request can be done via bot also, correct?
Yes, it can also be done. Actually, let's see. We have request to site. So this is just a very simple Power Virtual Agents bot that was created in the team. This was more for demonstration purposes, but this was relatively straightforward to create. So if I say I need a new team.
The bot made. Oh, there we go. Okay.
It will say, what do you want? Do you want a team, a SharePoint site? So it's very similar to the Power App. Steps through the process. So we'll say teams. What's the title? This is another demo. Describe the purpose. You can see there's a typo there. So this is just demoware. This is just a test. And do I want open, private, controlled, restricted? We'll say open for this one. And do I need external users? Sure, we'll say yes. And then again, summary, is this correct? In this case, I don't have a department, so it's inserted unknown. I can say yes. And it says your request has been submitted. You'll receive an email, same as the Power App. So this was literally about 15 minutes worth of work to kind of throw this together. But it's because of the way that it's built using various components. All we had to do is create a bot that adds an item to that SharePoint list, and the rest is already done. So yeah, that was pretty straightforward. I should get an email here again in a minute to approve that one. But yeah, that's works just the same.
All right, thanks, Rick. Yeah, so we have multiple interfaces, and of course the Power App runs on a phone, right? So we've had customers who were traveling before the pandemic, and they were in cars, and they needed to get a team site provisioned as they were going from one location to another, and they went on their phone and requested it. Somebody in IT approved it, and it was ready to go once they got to the meeting. So that was pretty cool too. All right, thanks, Rick. I'm going to take control. All right.
Okay.
All right. So one last thing I would like to highlight here. In terms of the cost for the solution, you can go ahead and reach out to the sales team to talk about the pricing for the ProVision itself. Ongoing costs, it's a one-time fee, but ongoing costs will be incurred right here with the Lightning Bolt. So this is an Azure automation runbook. So this is a consumption-based fee that Azure fee that you'll pay to Microsoft per month. We're seeing, even with our very heavy use customer that has tens of thousands of users out there, they're generating like less than $100 a month for the consumption right there. This arrow, this one right here between the Flow and Azure Automate, to get a synchronous call from the Flow to Azure is a premium connector licensed situation. So Microsoft sells a 5-pack of licenses, so you can run 5 of these flows that use premium connectors per month. Okay, so there's an ongoing cost for that. We could, if necessary, turn this arrow around and pull back into the SharePoint list. So you're just paying for the Azure fee. But we built it with the synchronous call because users tend to like that type of instantaneous creation of the site like we were demoing today. And they have other needs anyway for using premium connectors in their environment for different line of business solutions, and this is just consumes one of them. Okay, so I just want to touch on that for a second. And next, we're going to go over and I'm going to talk to Jerry about his experience. So, Jerry from Nordson, thanks for joining us today.
Yep, no problem.
Okay, so let's just go quickly down some questions here for you, and I'd like to hear your feedback on your experience with the product and with BA. So, first of all, what was Nordson looking to do? What was the goals for a solution like ProVision? What were some of the business challenges that you were running into?
Yeah, so we've actually been an Office 365 customer for quite a few years. Long before Teams was around, and one of the challenges we had early on with our adoption in Office 365 is the settings that kind of come out of the box from Microsoft leave everything open to end user creation and don't really allow for a lot of governance on the IT side. We had issues when Microsoft first came out with Office 365 groups, where we had all kinds of people creating groups with all kinds of silly names with the word test in them all over the place. And we just had an explosion of these types of things that we quickly had to shut off because people weren't really doing anything with them. They were just playing around with stuff. And we didn't want to have the same sort of thing happen with Teams. So we wanted to really plan out our Teams implementation. We were a Skype for Business customer. So as part of that transition away from Skype for Business to Teams, we wanted to make sure that we had some governance in place around Teams creation and really just didn't leave it open. So we looked at that, along with rolling out Teams, and look at a couple different products. Some of the products on the marketplace really good, but also really expensive. A lot of them tend to be per user based, which can be a lot of money to pay for just governance and Teams creation. So we originally started with really just manual governance of our team site creation. So we use ServiceNow as our ITSM tool, and we just had a request in ServiceNow that created a task for somebody in IT to manually create the team site. So we turned off team site creation for the general population, had a handful of administrators who could actually create team sites, and they would do these manually when requests came in. Not a lot of fun, but a good way to maintain governance. So really, we were looking at a way to automate that, because not a lot of value add for IT folks to do that manually. And the ProVision implementation itself, made a lot of sense for us, since it's using all the Microsoft tools we kind of already own, and solves the automation problem for us.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So the when we hit multiple multiple requirements, with this tool. It was interesting how you said that, it was the consistency of the application and automation of the governance plan, right? Mm-hmm. To your teams. That was definitely one that we targeted. When we first started this, it was the quiz at the beginning of what to use when.
Right.
Have you what were your thoughts on that when you saw that piece of it? I mean, that was like the first thing that we how we got going down this path,
Yeah. I thought that was really interesting. It's a little bit confusing, I think, for our end users. Microsoft doesn't really make it particularly easy to know what you need when, and unfortunately, they keep changing words and things around on us. So trying to have a glossary or an explanation of what should you use when is challenging. But yeah, that's a great point. That helps you sort of guide people to, well, this is a good use case for a team. This is a use case for maybe a SharePoint site. This is a good use case for a communication site. So it sort of helps guide the user in what they really need and what they're asking for.
Right. Okay. Yeah, cool. So in terms of the governance planning effort, Can you speak a second about, how that went when you were kind of working with BA on that? I know you already had some, planning in place, but we bring a checklist to the table too to help out. So
Yeah, I think,
go.
I think having, our governance manually in place already, we had already worked out a lot of the bugs that we had found along the way in that doing it manually. So that definitely helped. But the checklist was great. It walked us through, I wish I would have had it when we came up with our manual governance, actually, because it walked us through, things to think about when you're actually creating a team site and what sort of questions and creation criteria do you really need to think about when you're creating a team site. So that was really helpful. The spreadsheets were, pretty simple to fill out. Getting a group of people together and just deciding, what we wanted to do based on our, existing governance model was pretty quick.
All right, very good. Yeah, those enable us to kind of translate right into the updating and configuration of the run books in Azure.
Yep.
I mean, they're correlating, obviously, right? So.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. So how about the experience on the time frame for your rollout of ProVision? You guys did it pretty quick.
It went really fast. The only thing that we had to do was mostly around kind of admin functionality in our Office 365 tenant. So we had to create a user that runs under the ProVision implementation kind of framework. So we needed a user for that. So had to get a couple other groups internally to spin up some users for us and to provide some access for them. You mentioned the premium connector piece. We had to assign that to the service account that's really doing the ProVision piece. And then we're already an Azure customer, so we have an Azure tenant in place, really just provisioning the piece of Azure for ProVision. So that all went very, very quickly. I think our initial governance session was a couple days, 1 week. We had to set up some pieces of the environment after that. And I think Rick was able to go in and install most of our stuff the following week, tweak a little bit of access and rights for the ProVision user during that. And then we were into testing the following week. So really it didn't take hardly any time at all. It all went pretty quickly. Our testing, raised a couple of things we wanted to tweak in the request process. Those were all done extremely fast, having it be a Power App and really just using Power Automate to do that. That all happened pretty quickly. And we were running in less than a month.
Cool. So you guys added some questions or some.
We actually removed some.
Okay.
So we removed some of the questions from the out of the box piece and simplified the types of team sites that people can request. So in our particular situation, we don't really let people create public team sites. They're all private, so that's a question we didn't have to ask. The only real question, aside from the questions we needed to build our unique URLs, we have a bunch of drop downs and things that help feed into the naming convention for our team sites. But we really only allow two types of private teams to be created. One that's just strictly for internal use, so you can't invite external parties to those, and then one that you can, and that's really the only thing that we have. So it was probably removing more stuff than it was adding.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. The that goes to the point where every organization has a slightly different set of situations they want to do. I mean, it's very it's still the meta process is the same, but these little details of, oh, hey, I don't want any public teams. That is just based on preference, right? An organizational stance. Yeah, very cool. So, hey, a question about the so it sounded like you guys are doing this synchronous call. So you are using a premium connector. Yep. Have you you get 5 of those, right? Is that how
Yep.
you did it? You did the 5
Yeah,
pack?
it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you have another flow that's you envision implementing with that?
We don't at the moment, but
Yeah.
there are other connectors that kind of fall within that premium realm that are interesting to us. They've got hundreds, I think, now of connectors that are out there, and there are some of them to some of the environments we have that are interesting. We haven't used any of those yet, but it's kind of a bonus that we got those, right?
Yep.
Along with doing ProVision.
Right. Okay, cool. So how's the initial feedback on your customers? I know we just rolled this out recently, but any feedback so far?
Yeah, feedback's good. I think people are getting their team sites faster than they were with a manual process. The manual process is great, right? And people get assigned tasks, and it's one of the tasks you have to do during the day. It's everybody knows how easy it is to create a team site. It's really dumb simple, but it takes time. So you need to stop what you're doing and go create your team site for whoever. So a lot of the IT folks that were manually creating these team sites would batch them up. So, you wait till you get like 4 or 5 in, and then you make them. Whereas now, all we have to really do is, take a look at the request, review it, make sure that, there isn't one out there like it already. And, we have the same group doing this all the time. So they just kind of know there isn't really anything they need to look up. And you say approve, and you're done. And they get their team site right away. You don't have to email them, let them know. You don't have to close a ticket. You don't have to do anything like that. So I think the speed is definitely a big deal for people.
Yeah, that's great. So you have all of the code basically. We deploy it there. Any thoughts on provisioning other things in the environment?
So one of the things that we've kind of talked through a little bit, we haven't done anything with it yet, but you can actually, it's a relatively new function, I think, but in Teams you can create a team based on a team template. So we are considering maybe extending the application to allow template choice when you create a team. So one of the big uses we have for teams internally is project-based. So a lot of people use team sites for, specific projects, usually engineering projects. The engineers use team sites almost exclusively, and they tend to make tweaks and stuff to those sites, after they get provisioned in the standard way. Maybe looking at, well, should we have a handful of templates that are a starting place to make the actual team's management a little bit easier for the people doing the request. So that's something that's kind of on our plate to look at and see how we would do that. Our SharePoint environment was migrated from an on-premises environment, so we've got a lot of legacy site collections out there. And so when we provision SharePoint sites today, they typically end up being subsites of existing site collections, and they're more tightly bound to security and some other rules around how that works. So I haven't really considered doing that at the moment. And quite frankly, our requests for SharePoint sites have gone way down since we've enabled Teams.
Yeah, I bet because a lot of those requests were probably project based.
Yeah.
Yep. Everything else is kind of like about it because it's internet based, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. So how are you exposing the the link to ProVision? I mentioned that some people are putting on a left rail. What are you guys doing?
Yep. So we did that. We put the requested team link in Teams in the left rail, pinned it there from an admin perspective. So that's on everybody's Teams client. And one of the things you mentioned is it's mobile aware too. So it's everywhere. So it's on every client. So on a mobile device, you can ask the requested team. You can do it on your tablet. You can do it when you're not in the office. You can do it when you're out and about. So kind of neat that you can do that anywhere. I mentioned that we originally had a ServiceNow form that we had in our IT environment, IT request environment. We replaced the link for the ServiceNow form with the link to ProVision. So every place that there was a link previously, we've just pointed to ProVision now.
Very good. Okay. All right. So finally, any other feedback or anything you'd like to share with our guests here, and about BA or the whole experience with ProVision?
Yeah, the whole experience was really good. We've been considering a tool for a while, and the timing was just right, and things worked out well for us to implement ProVision, after the governance was in place. So I think if you haven't thought about governance and you're thinking about a tool, you should really do it manually for a while to kind of work through what those governance pain points might be, because we learned a lot just doing it manually for a while. So I think that kind of helped us make the whole process a lot smoother. It's nice and great that we can utilize some of the Office 365 tools we really already own, Power Apps, Power Automate. Obviously, we have SharePoint. So all of those things are kind of pieces that we already own and that we're able to leverage using ProVision. We did like the fact that it's not a subscription, so we don't have to continue to pay per user or something, or per number of requests or whatever to do our automation. That was very attractive to us. And the fact that now we sort of own all the code behind that, and we can do things like maybe look at what we want to do with Teams templates or some other piece along the way. So that was very attractive to us, and it worked out really well.
All right, fantastic. All right, Jerry. Well, hey, thanks a lot for your time today. We really appreciate it. We always, enjoy partnering with Nordson and working and talking to you. So
Great.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, Kevin, over to you.
Yes. Well, that concludes our presentation today. On behalf of Bennett Adelson team, myself and Jason, we want to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon. Just want to let everyone know, for your convenience, a replay of this webinar is going to be available on the Bennett Adelson website by the end of this week. Please feel free to contact any member of the Bennett Adelson team shown here on the slide for further information about ProVision or how Bennett Adelson can possibly assist your organization. And with that, I want to say thanks again and have a great afternoon, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.